Um, our session now is basically to talk about how Indonesia would join 133 countries that last year pledged to triple the capacity of renewables and to double the pace of efficiency improvements by 2030. And we're talking specifically about Indonesia. And we're very happy to tell you that we've actually finalized a joint research between Landscape Indonesia and Center for Global Sustainability of the University of Maryland. And the report is also launched today at this event. And by the end of this slide, you will see a QR code that you can scan and download the report. And I should thank our colleagues from University of Maryland to actually make that happen. Now, let's see. Tripling renewables, doubling the pace of efficiency improvements by 2030. Indonesia, well, first of all, of course, is that climate change is real. It is happening, and it's taking a toll on the world's economy. You know, 22nd of July was the hottest day ever recorded, and it appears to a lot of scientists that 2024 is going to be the hottest year ever recorded. What is interesting is that Indonesia, which is the theme of it is not one of the 133 countries, and there are few other countries that also have signatories to it. India is not, for example. So Indonesia is now coping with climate change through policies, through targets, emission reduction, and this is our enhanced NDC, which is that, you know, originally in 2010, the highest level of emissions come from the forestry sector. Over time, the energy sector takes over, and that's what we need to deal with right now. The NDC is committing Indonesia to 32% of emission reduction compared to the baseline, and then with own resources by 2030, and increase it to 43% with international cooperation. And then the second NDC is currently being developed. We know that it's due in February of next year. We are aiming for our forests and other land uses to be carbon neutral, to be a net sink by 2030, reaching net zero by 2060 for the whole economy, or earlier if cooperation is made available. So energy sector, in short, is the most strategic sector in Indonesia when it comes to reducing or limiting emissions. Here, there are a number of graphs I'm showing you at the same time. The blue bars basically is our emissions over time since 2000 to 2022, and you see basically an increasing trend. And this is the one most of the contributor of this increase is energy. And then if you see this is the electricity sector, the change of energy mix of the electricity sector. And if you see, from 1990 to 2021, the share of coal is rapidly increasing, all the way to about 2/3 basically by 2021. About 62% in 2021, all the way up I think by 2023 it's about 65, yeah, something. So we are assessing now. What does it mean if we triple our renewable capacity and double the pace of our energy efficiency improvement on the economy, on the macroeconomic? So we use like the system dynamic to basically to see what the implications are. We developed 4 scenarios. 2 of them are baselines, and 2 of them are alternative scenarios. The baselines are using 6% economic growth increase and 8% economic growth increase. The 6% is the original model. The 8% is what the current government, we just have elected a new president, and just prior to the US. He is more ambitious when it comes to economic growth. He wants 8% before the end of his term. And then 2 other alternative scenarios with the 6 and 8% growth. What if we actually increase the ambition? So the first, the baseline basically uses the business plan of the electricity expansion by the government of Indonesia and the electricity utility. And then the alternative scenario is using assumptions from JETP, the Just Energy Transition Partnership, which just issued its comprehensive investment and policy plan. So we used assumptions from that plan, used it on our model, and those are our alternative scenarios. And then we observe what would change with those scenarios. Of course, on income, on energy demand and supply, on emissions, but also on investment opportunities, on job creations, and poverty. So these are the scenarios, the 4 scenarios. And what happened is that, of course, growth leads to increased demand, and then what is interesting is that, and this is probably let's just go straight to here, that renewables will increase because of the increase in energy demand that's led by economic growth. And what is interesting is that we will already triple our renewable energy capacity by 2030 at the in the baseline scenario. So we don't need to do anything. Well, we do need to do something, but we don't need to have alternative scenario to triple our renewable. Yeah. But interestingly now, in the baseline, the share of everything else also increases. The capacity of everything else increases, including coal power plants, including fossil coal and other fossil coal. That basically means that even if you triple your renewables, your emissions will continue to increase. So this is what you'll see. We have about 10 or 11 gigawatt today, and it will increase to 36 gigawatt by 2030. That's more than triple. So that's basically what one conclusion, one lesson we learn is that tripling is not a problem. Increasing efficiency is a different story. Indonesia is increasingly energy intensive and increasingly carbon intensive, and that's indeed a challenge. If you see, our scenarios, the baseline scenarios, the 2 baseline scenarios and the 2 alternative scenarios will show different energy intensity of the economy by 2030. The lowest one, obviously, is the most ambitious energy intensity reduction, increase improvement of efficiency. And if you see the emission implication of those four scenarios, first is that by 2030, our alternative scenarios will show 30% lower emissions than the base by 2030. So even though we actually don't have alternative policies to make it happen, just because we push it a bit more ambitious, we actually will have reduced emissions in 2030 about 30%. So the peak, we expect that 2030 is going to be the peak. The peak is lower in the alternate scenarios than in the baseline scenarios. Now, by 2060, the divergence is even larger. The baseline goes all the way up to 3.9. Actually, 3.9 gigaton. And then the scenario, the alternative scenarios, the jet scenarios, will reduce it to basically zero or almost zero. And this is the difference. Yeah. Now, what are the implications? First is the implications on investment opportunities. Transitioning to renewables will open larger opportunity for investments. If you see the alternative scenarios, the one on the left, the two bars on the right, in 2030 and 2060, you see that by 2060 there are a lot more opportunity to invest. The investors like it, the government, and then we'll create sustainable number of green jobs. The left is basically the cumulative increase of green jobs. By 2030, the increase is about, by 2030, the increase is about 600 to 1.2 million new jobs compared to the base. By 2060, it diverges all the way to 28 million. And this basically shows that energy transition creates jobs. It's actually good for the economy. It increases investment, it creates jobs. And also reduce the people living in poverty. People basically can escape from poverty with energy transition being implemented. So just an additional graph here, which is probably obvious already, that it reduces air pollution, but I would like to show the significance of the reduction when you don't use coal anymore, when you use renewable. By 2060, the divergence, the reduction of air pollution is one point to ponder, since we are here in a climate conference. The question is, can climate finance actually assist, financing the transition? For example, early retirement of coal power plants will forego quite a lot of income that would create negative NPV. Can climate finance, can carbon market actually absorb the gap so that it closes the gap? As you know, early retirement of coal power plants is motivated by climate change, it's motivated by the reduction of emissions. Can it actually provide the necessary financing for early retirement? That's a question that we'd like to discuss right now. And thank you very much for for your kind attention. I would like to bring forward our colleagues or panelists to respond to this presentation. We have Paul Butar Bitar, who's the chair of Indonesia's JETP. So if you're talking about the confident JETP, here's the guy, a very good friend of mine. And then Bjorn, please come forward. Bjorn is with AITA. And then Nate Holtzman from the US delegation. And then Ji Hong, who's from the University of Maryland. Actually, Nate's also from the University of Maryland, but he's seconded now to the delegation of the United States. All right, let's start. I think I'd like to start with Nate. Nate, what would the world need? You know, what's the state of play in the world? You know, where are we? And what's hope that we have in the future in addressing climate?
Let's try this. That does sound better than ours. All right. So good afternoon. I want to thank Agus for the invitation to be here in Landscape Indonesia. Also, University of Maryland and AITA for giving us space and for hosting. Before I start, I actually want to say this is exciting for me because at one point, Agus and I presented with AITA at Copenhagen. Yes, it reminded me of that. That was a bright spot in what was otherwise a tough meeting. It's those of you who are there remember in Copenhagen, and we did a similar, not a different topic, but a panel together with AITA way back when, and I remember that as a very a good substantive contribution that we offered at that time. And Agus also and I have been working together for many years, I think since our graduate school days, and that dates us back to COP3, if you can believe that. So, okay. Anyway, so Agus asked a really important question for us all at COP29 and in our global quest to keep 1.5C within reach. In light of the global stock take outcome from Dubai last year, which you saw as part of the presentation here, countries of the world got together and has asserted the importance of keeping on 1.5 trajectories. They focused on our current round of NDC ambition enhancement that is happening as we speak in all countries, and looking at different national circumstances with a reporting date next year. And as part of that Dubai outcome, of course, there was the tripling of renewables, doubling of energy efficiency. And I think that ultimately that is, as we know, only a part of the overall integrated strategies that countries are going to need to be taking to get to a 1.5 globally compatible pathway, but is a critical backbone of success. And so there's a real value, I think, in the kind of analysis that we've seen earlier in the presentation today, showing the opportunities for that, not only in terms of like what is the feasible pathway for, in this case, Indonesia, to embrace and take on such a nationally determined sort of strategy, but also, I think, very importantly, centering the benefits that arise to all of our populations from doing that kind of transition with tripling renewables and doubling energy efficiency. And I was particularly struck by the air pollution outcomes figure there, where you saw incredibly wide divergence in air pollution reduction into two different scenarios that Agus showed. So ultimately, all of this is about centering our populations and centering the well-being of our people in our national circumstances, but also contributing that way to.
Thank you Very much need. I'd like to actually ask the next question to my good friend Paul Buta Buta. Um, I'd like to actually ask him to tell us where we are with JetP and how are we moving forward with it and yeah, are the challenges that JetP is facing that right now. Paul, thank you for being here and that's
Thank you, Ms. Agus. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here in this sessions. So, first to the report. I think that's very interesting. But I don't. I have to read the report because I would like to see actually whether you have included the policy dimension into the analysis. For example, the reason being because 2015, all coal power plant has to be, let's say, phased out. Or if not, then they have to use CCS. So then the emissions at 2060 will not be that high. So that's the policy that has already been
just a short reaction to it. What we use for the baselines is the KTL 2021, 2030, so the business expansion that may not have included the new policy.
Yeah. In the RUPTL, it actually mentioned also the policy of PLN that the last coal power plant to be phased out will be 2056. That's the last coal power plant. So that's why it would be interesting to read the report. That's the first thing. On the tripling of renewable energy, when we developed the scenario for JetP last year, we actually put the growth up on 6%, about 6%. And then the total capacity to be developed for the power sector would be, that's only on grid, it would be about around 60 to 70 giga. And then the current capacity that we have is only about 12 giga. So if we implement all what it is put into the JetP, actually we exceed that one. That's very important. But the problem is, it is the scenario that we model the result of the modeling. So with the assumption that there will be no issue with the policy, and then there will be no issue with financing, there will be no issue with the implementation, then there will be no issue with the procurement criteria. And that's the thing. That's the problem we have now. So one of the policy that has been done by government, for example, on the local content requirement, because many investors say that local content is one of the stumbling blocks of the development of renewable. Now government has get rid of it. They have developed the new regulations that allow, let's say, the waiving of the local content. Means that will be the issue. The more important point that becomes problematic actually for the development of renewable in Indonesia is really the procurement within the PLN. Because, for example, now to be able to start with the procurement, they have to have the so-called business plan. The business plan can only be, let's say, issued by government once the national electricity plan also approved. And the national electricity plan will only be approved once the government national energy policy has to be published by government. And the national energy policy is still not published. So this is one of the issues that we have. So as long as this national energy policy is not approved yet, not signed by the president, then we will have difficulties actually for procurement. So means we will only rely on the old business plan. Where you put it also in that slide, the green RPTL, where actually the development of renewable energy would not be that extensive. So learning from what PLN now is doing while waiting for all of the regulatory issues in their so-called accelerated renewable energy development, they target to have at least about in the initial let's say plan is to develop about 40 to 60 giga of renewable, of new power plant. 75% will be renewable, 25% will be gas. Until 2040, it would be about 100 giga, 75% of renewable, the rest 20% is gas, 5% liquid. So the ambition is there. Only these four issues that need to be in check and need to be handled. And this is the issue that we have under JETP actually, because when we talk about or people always ask us how much money has been disbursed. So far, we only get almost 1 billion approved of the concession loan, about 200 million of the grant. But as soon as the more project will be procured by credit, this could be jumped, the size will be jumped, because the JETP financing will only flow if there is a project. So also.
Okay, thank you, Paul. More questions in the next round, but I would like to ask Bjorn, my good friend Bjorn, with AITA. How do you think climate finance can help energy transition? And especially, the ones that Paul just mentioned, how to accelerate JETP. Thank you.
Thank you, August, and thank you so much for organizing this panel. I think it's a very pertinent conversation to have. As you mentioned, the energy transition is completely critical for us to reach our net zero targets together with also the Apollo net sink targets. I think these are the two key things for Indonesia and for many countries in the region actually looking at doing the same thing. Now, of course, from AITA's point of view, we are seeing what are the opportunities for carbon markets and carbon financing to really come into play. A lot of the focus at the negotiations here in Baku is, of course, on the NCQG, the new collective quantified goal on climate finance. And I think we need to recognize that climate finance is extremely important in its own right, but carbon markets can help to mobilize part of the capital necessary for the transition. It's one tool in the toolbox that we need to use. And I think what we are seeing now is, of course, with Article 6 coming into play, we got the 6.4 standards on removals and methodologies endorsed or taken note of by the CMA this Monday already. It means that we can have projects under the new Article 6.4 mechanism by second half next year, if everything goes right here in Baku. And under Article 6.2, we're already seeing a lot of bilateral cooperation happening between countries on energy transition aspects, on also, I think, a lot of sustainable agriculture. A number of projects are coming online, and the first credits actually were transacted between Thailand and Switzerland already last year in December. So if we can work together to scale that market up and also figure out how we use it for transition, this is the maybe slightly challenging part where, of course, myself, I'm based in Singapore, and we are part of a transition credits coalition, which is led by the Monetary Authority of Singapore, where we are looking at the use of carbon credits specifically in transitioning and providing finance for the early retirement of coal-fired power plant, and then replacing that, for example, with battery energy storage and renewable. There are a number of challenges when it comes to transition credits, and I'm happy to speak about this, but of course, one of them is around additionality. Another one is specifically around leakage for those types of projects, because we do know that simply retiring one coal power plant, we are risking to lose out on power to the grid. We need to balance that out at the same time, and that is a big challenge. I think another point, which I'm happy to come back to, is the scale of demand on the market, because ultimately these projects, they require a lot of finance. The voluntary market today is not big enough to deliver that demand signal for projects looking to transition.
Thank you. Very profound. Thank you very much, Bjorn. I would like to invite my good friend Jeong Lu from University of Maryland. There are a lot of geopolitics in play here, ranging from the coal part to the renewable part to the critical mineral part, and I think Jeong has something to say about it. Please.
Okay, first, I also want to express my gratitude to Agus and the Landscape Indonesia for leading this great report, also in collaboration with us. We are the Center for Global Sustainability at the University of Maryland. It was a very good experience for two of us working together on such an important topic, because this is actually represent over a year-long effort by having the research idea, then going to developing the research design to do the analysis and finally deliver the report just in time for our event. So we encourage people to download and read more details for this report, and it's both on the Landscape Indonesia website and also on the CBS website. Now let's come back to the geopolitics. So everything when we talk about Indonesia, I want to go back to talk a little bit about the captive coal power plant. But this actually the challenge actually Indonesia is facing right now. So our recent report showed actually captive coal is taking almost 18 or 28% of the entire coal capacity by last year. And there's more actually under construction. So if we look at it by 2025, captive coal will take about 34% of the total coal capacity. And these captive coal plants actually are going to serve those energy intensive industry like steel, mining, critical mining activities, for example, the nickel mining. And therefore, in order to decarbonize that, we have to face the effect how to decarbonize this captive coal power plants. So of course, there's several options. Of course, people talking about the renewable. That's a topic that we are also going to discuss here, because renewable potentially can provide a good solution, because right now we see globally there's already 5 to 6 gigawatts of renewables that deployed in those mining sets, including across the global. But Indonesia, we don't see a lot. There are several reasons. Of course, the first reason we know for sure is that having subsidies still going to the fossil fuel area, which make the solar price still less competitive. Although in Indonesia, the solar project price decreased 30% already, right? But still a little bit high. And also look at Asia, the ASEAN members, Indonesia's solar cost is still among the highest. So even though you see the price drop, we did not see enough drop. And also, I think one more important factor is the Indonesia lacks the domestic manufacturers or production of those solar components to deliver the cost-effective technology. And one more important thing, as Paul mentioned, is 40% the local content the government, the regulation imposed before 2024 August. But now we see this, the government eased this percentage to 20%, right? So that will allow the Indonesia to import those solar panels, for example, China. That's what I'm going to discuss more now, because China actually right now is the #1 solar producers and also the manufacturers across the world. And China is the biggest investors in renewables. And if we look back to this captive coal power plant, we see 70% of the captive coal actually is invested by those Chinese investor companies, private and public companies. So I think we do see the opportunity right now, because China now, they have a lot of solar capacity, a lot of green technologies, and also domestically, China used to be also use captive coal to power their industrial park. So now I think that China start reducing a lot of the coal and produce more renewables into those industrial parks. So I see there's a good opportunity and a lesson we can learn from China to do the same thing, similar thing in Indonesia, because a lot of Chinese investors is also have the interest to develop it further. So within everything, the regulation, the decreased solar price, and also the motivation, hopefully from the investors. So we hope in the near future, we can see more renewable deployment in the nation.
Thank you very much, Jehan. Very profound indeed. I would like to go straight to Nate, just to continue what Jehan already started. I think this is a very, very interesting topic that needs to be taken up. One is that there's a lot of multilateralism here. Countries collaborate with each other. Countries invest in each other's backyards. They also take up supply chain from other countries. But at the same time, if we see, for example, today, the climate conference, there is somehow a mood and probably some fear, that we will be a little bit more unilateral in the near future, in the next 4 years, probably. And I wonder how you see, from what you heard from from Jehan, Paul, and from Bjorn, how can we continue to be multilateral and to collaborate with each other?
Thanks, Argus, for the great question. You on there? Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Argus, for the question. I agree this is an important moment for our multilateral process, and for sure for our discussions together in the COP context, but also the COP context is also not the only place, I will note, that these important conversations happen among and between countries and among and between the actors within our countries. So, the energy transition is an extremely broad and deep topic that really covers all aspects of kind of national economies. And so that work will continue in lots of ways. In particular at the COP, we have, as was noted by Bjorn, there's discussions around finance, of course, at the center of COP29. There's the overall national strategies and NDCs that will be announced over the course of the next few months in advance of the deadline next year, leading up to COP30. So all of those would be points of discussion, both in terms of internal processes within each country. Different countries go through political cycles, and so the Paris process was designed to be robust to those cycles, and I think it is. So within countries, there will be conversations, and elections happen in many places, and then leadership changes. And the Paris process will go on. We have lots of opportunities, meaning we, the international community, have lots of opportunities at this COP to join together and have productive conversations and, frankly, even agreements to accelerate that kind of collaboration, like Jehan was talking about in a few minutes ago. So one other thing I would say is in terms of I don't want to get too far into it because right now there's in the U.S. there's only one president at a time, and so right now our president is Joe Biden, and we're continuing in that mode for the next 2 months. And the United States is here in force, and will be continuing to work in that vein. Our senior advisor Don Podesta made some comments the other day that highlighted the importance in the United States of subnational governments and other types of subnational actors, including businesses, to carry forward a lot of the work over the course of the next few years. And so that's something that we are absolutely we have witnessed before in the United States under diverse administrations, and not just one or the other party, but we've seen a real growth of that subnational engagement. And there will remain, I think, tremendous opportunities for, if we're thinking U.S. specific, opportunities for subnational governments, including governors and mayors and whatnot, as well as businesses to continue to support and engage in that process beyond just the multilateral context of the U.S.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Nate. And I think you pointed out a very, very important issue here, which is the role of the subnational governments at the provincial or state level, as well as cities and districts. I think that's a very, very important takeaway from here. And as such, then, a national government is important, but may actually not be as important as we thought it was. I'd like to go to Paul with what you've heard, especially Jay Hong's, comments about some of the geopolitics of renewables, topics of coal, supply chain and that, and then also Bjorn's comments about the market being, we know that Article 6 is basically commencing, right? Started by 11/11. In Indonesia, 11/11 is the day of shopping. So let's shop for common trends. Exactly. So how would that help? Especially one of the key well, I would not going to be say problem, but challenges. This in ZP is related to cobalt. If you could probably address a little bit more specifically what retiring cobalt plant, what the challenges are, and how climate finance and carbon markets could help. I think that would be great.
Thank you for the question. Before I come to the question, I would comment to your saying that the carbon markets will really need to play a significant role in energy transition in Indonesia. That's why when if you remember 2019, FERA actually issued kind of conditions that they would not allow any new renewable energy project under FERA. I was so disappointed because the main reason for them, or their argument was actually because renewable energy was already feasible. But feasible where? Is it in Indonesia? Where is it in other developing countries or in United Emirates Arab and so on, but not in Indonesia? So in some other country, there was a really government support for the development of renewable. While in our case in Indonesia, we have to buy our own land, we have to pay for the construction, to pay for the transmission, so all this kind of thing. We have to arrange everything. So by excluding the renewable energy for FERA last time, I talked to them that actually it was a wrong decision because exactly this kind of challenge, they made the private developer actually need money to support that development. That is when the carbon credit should come in to support this kind of renewable energy development. Even now, even we have a huge target for renewable energy, the support from the government is not as extensive as the iron. That's why we will still need to look at the carbon market for that, including voluntary, not only the Article 6. Luckily, I see that one of the issue that the supervisory body that now working on is the revision of the SCM 002. That's for renewable energy, on renewable energy. Good on that. Then on the captive power plant, we in Indonesia we have actually conducted a kind of we are now working on conducting research on the captive power plant and trying to check how much what is actually the capacity of the captive power plant now operating in Indonesia. We have the data that the operating captive power plant is about 23 point almost 24 gigawatt, but only 18.8 gigawatt is coal. And then under this project that now coming, under construction is about 5 gigawatt, and then permitted is about 3.4 gigawatt, and pre-permit is about 5 gigawatt. So, but the thing is this one. With the China's decisions prior to COP21 in Glasgow, saying that the government of China will not allow Chinese private sector to invest in coal power plant outside China, then the project or the industry in Indonesia actually having difficulties now to secure financing. That's why around 3.4 giga coal power plant that have already got permits, they are not able to build that. So, and even the coal captive power plant that was planned, that is now on pre-permit, they don't know whether they can build it. So, and that's why it becomes very important actually to really go into renewable. But the problem really is there is also to your comment about subsidy. So in the captive coal power plant, captive industry actually, they don't get subsidy. They have to buy coal at the market price. So they have to buy at market. So there is incentive for them to really invest in renewables. But the problem is, in most cases, if the mineral processing, they are not connected to the grid. So they are not able to get the energy from the grid. That's first. And the second and the biggest question for them is actually the industry needs heat. It's not only electricity. They need heat for industrial process. And always the question, whether the renewable energy would be able to provide the heat. And that's the biggest question for them. That's why they still rely on thermal, because they can use the heat for the process. So we had a discussion with the colleague from US last time about because of the complaining about the captive, right? Then we asked them, can you please introduce us to technology that could really work on the captive, that they could support the process, they support the heat and so on. And there's still the challenge, especially with the pricing. So this is now the problem that we have in the captive. And we are now in the discussion that we have with the captive operator, and they are really like to see this particular issue. So it's not even about the price, because they have to buy the coal from the market. So if we would be able to, let's say, get a technology that could provide electricity and heat at the same price, then it would be actually much easier to sell the idea of decarbonizing the captive power, the captive industry. So this will be the issue of what I say. And then it's true that most of the smelters in Indonesia actually belong to Chinese investors, and then but they will feel the heat soon. Starting next year, they will be included in the ETS for the power sector. All the coal power plant in the captive will be included in the ETS, and they have to pay more for their emissions. So, and we have a discussion with our colleague that also Chinese colleague that own the captive. Then actually, the fact is there is some industrial area, they have a kind of a business, so-called business area license, right? They can generate their own power energy in that area. And they have to have renewable energy as part of it. They have a business plan. It has to be approved by government. And some of them really have already implemented. They have built already renewable in their business area. But always the question is, back to the question, will there be any, let's say, technology that could provide the heat for the industrial area? That's the more the question. If there is any, then we will be able to discuss.
I just want to, I wanted to pick up on Paul's really interesting comments about and building on Jay Hong's highlighting of the captive that question. It is a complicated question. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of different, economic growth and investment questions. There's the energy provision. What kind of energy, electricity versus process heat, all these things. And I do know there's some, it's really a topic that, we have all been, frankly, learning quickly about over the past, let's say, 2 years or so. And thanks also to Jay Hong and the UMD team for pulling some data together on that as well and making it publicly available, which I think is a really good contribution to to the overall understanding globally around this important question. But I did want to pick up on a specific thing, Paul, that you said, and just kind of note, I made a comment a few minutes ago about options for continued discussion and learning, even beyond into 2025. And I think this particular question about understanding more about what is going on with captive power, hearing more about what the needs and options might be from the people that are needing to be implementing and hopefully implementing in a greener, lower carbon strategy, but needing more information, needing more kind of options, needing to discuss about different technologies and frankly different financing structures that might be out there. So so I think this is a really critical topic to jump in on over the next number of months. I know you are already doing it, but in terms of the ways that other groups, both on the private sector side as well as the research side, could potentially step in and be helpful. I think this is a really good question to raise, and I would be very interested in seeing more of that happen.
Thank you, Nate. So you mentioned heat, Paul, and the discussion becomes you. Just follow up on especially because Paul just responded to your comments, and especially probably good to also think about the captive power part of this, especially because captive power is mostly built to power nickel mining and nickel smelting. All of them are also have quite a lot of geopolitical aspects here.
I also want to thank Paul to mention it is a truth that those captive coal power plants, they are serving to those industries. They really need those reliable electricity, right? Because Indonesia, even though the government tried to give universal access to electricity on the grid, but the blackout still happened. So for this industry, they are not able to lose this kind of blackout because they really want reliable electricity to support their business. So that's also very important. And also, as Tom mentioned, again, the distribution of the supply and the demand, because Indonesia is very unique. You can see the Sulawesi, Maluku, there's a lot of nickel activity happen, but they don't have a grid, for example. That's why this area still rely on the captive coal power plant to produce electricity to support their business. So I think we are all facing one challenge, like how we can do to decarbonize or phase out those coal while not impact their business service, right? So this is the most important, and also mention the technology. Are we have enough technology to replace coal? But I'm thinking there's definitely some low-hanging fruit here to start phasing out the coal gradually in those areas. Because we have a database capture 140 industrial parks in Indonesia that we built it over the 2 years. We have all the electricity capacity, who are the owners. So if the Chinese invest, for example, the Qingshan, the industrial park, I know they already started the conversation with the Chinese stakeholder and also Indonesia government. I know they have planned to deploy renewables in their industrial park. Yes, they have one already. Yes, exactly. So I think they try to expand it. I think this is important for us to look at good models to see if they are willing to do more. What is their motivation? I think they need a motivation to do more as a business. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Jianhong. And as Paul said, there will be a lot of challenges for the coal power plants, including the captive power, because of the ETS, because of the carbon pricing through tax, and also now CBAM, for example, nickel, even if it goes through China, will be subject to CBAM. And there's a lot of reasons for Indonesian captive operations to actually decarbonize, right? So what I'd like to actually ask this question is then to Bjorn. we know that there are efforts now to bring carbon market to close the financial gap from early retirement. Methodologies have been developed for voluntary markets. The coal to clean carbon initiative by Rockefeller Foundation, I think, is working on methodologies under FERA and also gold standards. The Asian Development Bank is working on compliance market methodology for compliance market, 6.4 especially. But all of them are for grid connected, and nothing is done for captive power. And I think we are of the opinion that similar effort needs to be done for captive power. 18.8 gigawatts is the stake that we're talking about. That everyone wants to decarbonize, and no one gets, to think about how actually to do it, how to close the gap. And we think that, like you say, carbon market may actually provide the necessary resources. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think importantly, coming back to the point of unilateralism, this is not something we see only in trade of physical goods and assets. We're also seeing it in the carbon market. And I want to highlight this trend because we are here together at COP29 to agree on international rules for carbon markets. But at the same time, you have certain parties, and I'm not naming any names, who are potentially looking at leaving the agreement and also thereby leaving Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. Because if you're not a party to the Paris Agreement, you cannot participate in international carbon markets under Article 6. This is very clear. And we have actually also done some modeling with University of Maryland on the role of Article 6 in increasing climate ambition. And what that shows is that Article 6, if all countries collaborate, we could actually reduce costs of achieving NDCs by 2030 by $250 billion. And by 2050, that's by 2030. And by 2050, of course, this number increases even further up to $1 trillion if all parties cooperate. Interestingly, we did a follow-up to that study looking at what happens if some countries or parties do not choose to participate in the market. And what we saw is that the parties who are still part of the carbon market, they are still receiving more or less the same benefits. But the ones who are left out, they obviously do not receive any benefits of being part of this market. So this is maybe a message to those parties who are now looking at potentially not participating in the market. I urge you to consider our study and these numbers to see how are you losing out on trying to basically avoid that system. And then I think importantly, as a second point, because we are discussing the role of carbon financing in transition credits, we need to look at the demand side. Because right now we do have a challenge both in voluntary markets and in Article 6, whether you want to name it as compliance or not, because actually Article 6 can supply both voluntary units, that means units without corresponding adjustments that have not been authorized for NDC or compliance use, as well as Article 6.2 ITMOs that are authorized, have corresponding adjustments that can be used for compliance purposes. Singapore and many other countries, but I highlight Singapore, is doing something very interesting here because they have put in place a carbon tax and they are allowing companies that are covered by the carbon tax to actually meet their compliance obligations by using Article 6 international carbon credits. What this means is they are sending a real price and demand signal to the market. And we know that currently the carbon tax is around 25 Singapore dollars per ton. They have showed a trajectory, it will increase to 45 Singapore dollars per ton. And then I think from 50 to 80 Singapore dollars per ton by the end of the decade. So if you're a project developer or an owner of a power plant, you actually know the the ceiling price that market participants would be willing to pay for these types of credits. And I think already an MOU have been announced with Philippines as the first project, the Southern Luzon Thermal Coal Power Plant, under this initiative by Singapore. And I think what Paul also highlighted is that now the ETS in Indonesia is kicking in as well. So we need to see not just the demand from the international markets, which is again both voluntary and potentially compliance linking into domestic pricing system, but also the demand and support coming from the domestic market in Indonesia. And as AITA, we're very keen to work together with the new administration and support also the expansion of the ETS in Indonesia and to learn from the best practices in other markets, because we know now so many different compliance systems all over the world. We should build on these learnings and see how we can link them together to most cost effectively achieve our climate targets.
Thank you very much, Björn. We have probably about 15 minutes for getting the floor to ask questions or comment, please. And please state your name and organization. Thank you.
Hi there. Mark Tilley here from Carbon Pulse. Last year at COP28, Indonesia said it was exploring the use of credits generated by 6.2 with Norway as a way to fund floating solar projects. And I was just curious, we haven't really heard much about that since then, so I'm curious if the panel can shed any light on that.
Thank you. Any other comment or question so that the panelists can address again? Yes, one more, if I may.
Hi, my name is Tomoichi Ka, MAFG. Question related to this industrial process key. So clearly there's dependency, right? Dependency on technology. But at the same time, many of us committed to net zero 2060, 2065. So how do you think about this kind of deadline, but at the same time, there's dependency on new technology? How do you square the circle? Because there are some technologies that are not available today, but you have to scale to get to that representative goal that Indonesia has. So how do you think about the dependency, but at the same time, making sure you will make progress to get to the goal at the state level? Thank you.
Thank you. Very good question. Any other question? If not, I would probably ask our esteemed panelists to start. And I would like to start with Paul, probably, because there are quite a lot of technical questions.
Yeah, so thank you. On this Norway things, it is actually a study. It's not necessarily, let's say, transactions for the let's say, solar, but there is a study conducted by GGCI looking at how the Article 6 could work. They want to have it for the floating solar, and it is not completed yet. The study is not completed yet, and then anyway, they cannot, let's say, implement directly. So it had to come into the business plan of PLN and so on before it goes to the Article 16. That's the first thing. The second thing is, as you know, there has to be an MOU between government and Indonesia and Norway for specific Article 16. What we have now is the support in general, including for RED plus and so on, but not yet for the Article 6.2. So, but they're now working on this let's just start looking at the opportunity for let's say using floating solar for this kind of collaboration. But if that's also my opinion to that let's say process last time. I told that to the team that working on it. if they would really, let's say, develop collaboration for Article 6.2, I would not take the solar because it might go actually commercial, that you can get actually financially commercial for that. I would go for geothermal with what geothermal power plants with the higher challenges and so with higher risks and so on. So I would go for that instead of or coal phase out instead of going for let's say trivial things, trivial renewable energy development. So it was my critic to them. I told them about it already last time. I'm still in study; it's not done yet. That's for the first question. I will respond to that actually. So, Jiong, okay. So Jiong mentioned about the technology actually in her presentation in her speech. In our JET-P, we actually include, let's say, the ammonium and hydrogen that could replace the coal as a feedstock. So the problem is the cost is still too expensive. So Japan, I think Japan is working on it. There is a, let's say, a pilot in Indonesia that is being done by Japan on how actually a kind of co-firing could be done with coal. So when we see later on that the cost for hydrogen or ammonia would be reduced, and that would be actually the perfect, let's say, replacement for the coal, and that would be something that could be, let's say, pursued in the future.
Maybe if I may just add for the context of some of the audience, I think Martin knows very well, but to participate in Article 6.2 markets, a lot of host countries, and especially in developing economies, are finding it quite challenging because there are a lot of requirements to be able to identify what types of projects, what types of activities are we willing to authorize, because the authorization under Article 6.2 means you're not able to count it towards your own NDC. You're actually exporting those mitigation outcomes, those ITMOs, to another country. And I think in the context of Indonesia, but Paul provided it very clearly, and many other countries in the region, they are not yet a full understanding of how we're going to reach our NDC, where will we be able to potentially export units, and if so, what types of infrastructure, tracking, and pricing do we need to consider for those units? So just to provide that context.
Jehong, Nick, would you like to?
I also want to comment for just mentioned the co-firing, but we did actually a great paper looking at the possibility of using co-firing in the captive and also the general coal fleet by using the residue instead of like directly using the wood, which causes the deforestation. So there's a little bit challenge in Indonesia, but it's feasible. But this is some technology already deployed, but needs to explore further because you need to rectificate, right? But also, I think most of the time the modeling, because they are forward-looking. So that's why you will see in the transportation sector a lot of hydrogen and also the sustainable fuel recall, right, in the aviation. So I think this is already planted into the modeling, but not ready, but will be used in the future. And because this will be those tools eventually, because right now even electric vehicle adoption is not that high, but then you transition to the hydrogen and to the sustainable fuel. But actually in Indonesia, they already started the biodiesel project, right? The government have an ambition by B50 by 2030, right? So this is also some study we are also looking at it because those biodiesel, it can carbonize, but meanwhile we need to be cautious about the deforestation again, because everything in Indonesia we have to face the nexus between the energy and the land use sector. That's why we need to be more careful about that. But also want to mention, because we mentioned on the solar, on our database, actually, we have 140 industrial parks. actually we found using different resources, like 20 industrial parks already used or expressed their interest in using solar. Positive signals from the investors. I want to give a shout out of the Indonesia's effort trying to promote the renewable energy. But Agus just told me that China just have the largest the largest floating solar. So I think the technology become more and more promising. So let's just keep positive attitude about this just transitions. Yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to offer another round of questions, comments, please. We have less than 10 minutes. Yes.
For the breakdown of Renewable from University of Maryland. I just want to ask about the renewable deployment in Indonesia. I think compared to some of the peer countries in Southeast Asia, I think also more comment on it's like slower than other countries. I do want to see what's your comment on about like the key challenges for Indonesia to deploy renewable and how we can overcome those. I think before can really make the transition really to meet the net zero. I feel like thinking about the comparing to the peer country, what are the
Thank you. Yes, please.
Okay. Actually, currently there is but it's very small renewable is being in the bidding process. Recently, there is one subsidiary PLN of National Electricity Utility Company that let's say kind of request for proposal from partners for about 1.6, 1.7 giga renewable solar, wind, and hydro. And then PLN has put a kind of almost 1 giga hydro. And then they will have another procurement in the next year. It will be quite substantial amount of renewable to be procured next year. But of course, it is not comparable with China, India, and so on. But at least we start, right? But as I mentioned before, one of the key issues for us is really in the past we have developed quite a lot of coal power plants. So last time, for example, government foresee the development of so the growth of about 7%, but we didn't achieve that. Let's say leading to the capacity overcapacity in the grid, and then with that overcapacity for power plants, PLN as this let's say utility company have difficulties really to put a new request for proposal for renewable energy because of this one, because of the overcapacity. And that's why in the accelerated scenario that I mentioned before, one of the ways that PLN now is thinking about is how to reduce the capacity of coal power plant. That's already in their model. So, for example, instead of 80% of capacity factor of the coal power plant, they are ready to reduce it maybe to 60 or even 50%. But of course, it will cost because the contract they have with the IPP is take or pay. So whether they use the non-fuel, they have to pay. And so if they take another renewable, means they have to pay double. This is the challenge now that PLN have. So if PLN, if there is no policy from the government about this kind of capacity, then maybe the development of renewable will still be slow. However, the good thing is that based on the scenario that PLN have already developed, they said that by 2026 or 27, then the overcapacity will be over, not there anymore. So it means starting from that yes, more and more renewable will be developed, and they have to start procurement now or next year. And that's why starting next year, actually, we will see more and more procurement for renewable energy. Okay. But actually, the project developers should not only look at the project by PLN, but we need to go to the scale. And they start already there, because it is business to business, the process is much easier. So we know that, for example, Singsan and the other, they are now actually gotten off from private sector to develop 500 mega, 1 giga of solar PV. But again, the challenge is, as you said, the reliability and so on. And then we know that another legal smelters, because of the market pressure, they will have to reduce their carbon footprint. So as long as the market that market demand really to get low emissions product, then I think all of this captive, all of the industry will go for renewable.
Thank you. For anyone else to add here? Otherwise, I'd like to
Well, you mentioned previously that the captive power plants would be covered under the Indonesia's ETS as of starting next year. How obviously prices are currently for the ETS are quite low. I mean, how long do you think it will take before those captive power plants will feel that sort of financial strain covered up in that scheme to actually incentivize transition or when we look at decarbonizing and switching fuel sources, etc.?
Thank you for this question. So there is an interesting question actually, because could we differentiate the system for the on-grid and off-grid? So because the on-grid is subsidized, the off-grid not. So because if one of the issues with the on-grid is actually the clause in the PPA in private and PLN saying that if there is government force majeure, then any price increase for the operational cost of the coal power plant can be passed through to PLN, and then PLN will pass it to the government, adding to the subsidy. And that's the problem to the government, why they cannot put that much, let's say, pressure on the on-grid. But on the captive, there is no issue like that. So the stricter the cap would be, the better for them actually. Although for the government, also for them might not be actually not that good actually, but for the market will it be good? So if the stricter it is. So this is now the discussion now is still ongoing with the government, especially by December, government should issue the cap for the captive. How much would be the cap for the captive? So it's not finalized, but we hope that the cap should be as low as possible so that it will be able to attract the conversation. Emission cap.
Okay, and another one we need to wrap up. Yes, we need to wrap up. Probably one more question.
So just one last question. Also, Maya Zhu from University of Maryland. Thanks for the great panel. My question is, could you share a bit more on the supply chain aspect in terms of solar PV manufacturing, and what is the plan for in Indonesia for that? Thank you.
Thank you. I guess that's another question for you.
Thank you. Because of the local content requirement, right? So government, let's say, would like to have all solar PV manufacturing in Indonesia, and Trina Solar start already the construction of let's say solar module, and they should actually start operating this year, if not early next year. And SCG have already start construction, and we hope that actually more and more solar manufacturing will be built in Indonesia. And the reason being is not only because of the local content, but actually because of the IRA and the possibility of exporting the solar module to the US. And that's the motivation for the solar manufacturing.
I will say this really fast because we should have stopped 2 minutes ago. But I want to say one thing about the US IRA in that context, which is that is one of the things that we actually do expect will likely stay nearly complete even through this next administration. Now, you never know, of course, but the way that those tax credits are structured are very, in our view, politically durable. And one of the few things that survived the previous Trump administration was our production tax credit and investment tax credits in the United States. Didn't get touched. And the reason for that is people in Congress like to have the benefits flowing to their districts. They're very unlikely to undo that. So it's something that might be a way for continued investment flow.
Thank you. And thank you very much. I think we're out of time already, almost over. I would not do anything but thanking all the great panelists, and thank you for coming to this event. And let's continue the discussion elsewhere. Thank you.